Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is Peter Lavelle, co-founder of The Gaggle and host of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Yesterday, the Department of Justice stepped into the conflict over last week's election. Attorney General Barr has promised an investigation into voting irregularities. What was interesting about this is that, first of all, it's important to remember that this is something separate from the lawsuits being filed by Trump's campaign. This is a Department of Justice investigation. But what's interesting about this is that it's being done before the voting certification. Which means that Barr is precisely trying to avoid the situation in which the certification is done and then the election is over and done with, and that's it. So in other words, he's doing it at a time when it is still possible to alter the results tabulated last week. So that's an important thing. But it's also
it's also important here because people are, and it's actually a fair quibble because the FBI shouldn't be involved in an ongoing campaign. However, the DOJ has responded is that they even have a higher cause than that, is to make sure that the election has integrity. So that is a higher calling to it. It's going to be hotly debated, and it is already. But Barr
right, but I think the important point is that it can still alter the election, because he said it would be fine if we can, we can do the investigation after the election if we decide that the outcome of the investigation doesn't alter the election. In other words, individual acts of fraud can be done after the election. That, there's no priority there. The reason that he's doing it now is that it has to be done before the certification of the results. In other words, there's still a possibility that the irregularities were on such a scale that if discovered, they could still alter the outcome. Whereas all the other cases, and they said, the voter fraud, which certainly can be and would be criminally prosecuted, they can be deferred until after the election. So that's why he's making it clear that you only investigate where you find election fraud on a systematic scale, on a scale that it could alter the outcome of the election. Needless to say, the media are indignant, screaming in horror about what the DOJ is doing. Barr is, of course, deemed to be Trump's creature. Nonetheless, I think it is very important that the DOJ should step in and do it now before it's fait accompli, because that's exactly what the Democrats and the media ally want. Let's have this election to fait accompli within 2 weeks, over and done with. That's it, out. Trump's gone. Biden is the new president. And I think it's very important that that the DOJ should step in at this stage. Maybe they'll find nothing, but it's important that
maybe they'll find nothing. I'm really glad that you stressed that, okay? Because I did a crosstalk yesterday, and I asked the question over and over again. Well, don't you want to make sure that the election had integrity? It was honest and fair. I mean, that's in Joe Biden's interest to determine here. So, but the resistance from the left, this is very typical for their playbook. They demand you to accept. Okay, what was the math is math, and my reply was, yeah, math is math. Okay, let's find out what the math is here. But what's interesting here is that you on the left. They're making this kind of very broad brush. Okay, it's over. Get used to it. Don't be a sore loser, even though they were sore losers for 4 years. Okay, but for the Trump supporters and attorneys, states attorney generals that are looking into this here, this is again a popular upsurge. Okay, we want to know what happened in this election. Particularly the way the voting process is so irregular. It's so uncommon. Well, the first time in American history. And so, I think personally that, William Barr, there was pressure from below for him to do something. And of course, on the left, it's pressure from above. Get big tech involved, get the media involved, tie a bow on this, and essentially, quote unquote, get rid of the evidence. Okay, and essentially that's what they want to do. And the more that they chastise Trump voters for being sore losers, well, then you can just turn around and say, well, talk about being sore losers. All right. So this impasse is something both of us expected, and I don't think it's going to be resolved anytime soon. As you've pointed out, none of the votes have been certified. Okay, and I think December 8th is Safe Harbor Day, so there's a lot of time here to look into these allegations. And every single one of them should be. What do we have the FBI for? I mean, there's a whole division. Apparently, the guy that runs the division quit. When Barr set out the directive, okay? That's what they're supposed to do. We have a mechanism, we have laws, we have organizations to deal with this. And thank goodness you don't have to be using it all the time, but when it's necessary, it's there. Use it. I can't get my head around this whole attitude is that it's done and dusted. It's not. No votes have been certified. Safe Harbor Day is on the 8th. I think it's 2 days later that we have the Electoral College votes. I mean, nothing has been certified. Just because CNN and MSNBC say something doesn't mean it's in line with the law.
Right. Well, I think that's what this is all about. The Democrats, I think, suspect that a lot of fraud did take place last week. And they don't want this to be uncovered. The more that you try to wrap this up in a few days, the more you say it's over, it's a done deal, transition must take place immediately, the harder it will be to try to overturn the result. Because, hey, imagine if you're a judge and you're going to say, yeah, I think the Trump campaign has a point here. I think there were some serious irregularities here. There was some real cheating and fraud taking place. Now that judge will become the target of such hatred. Can you imagine the CNN knowing what they do? They would just simply dox that judge. They would publish that judge's home address. He would be the target of protests and violence. And so therefore, it's quite likely that many judges will be intimidated by this. I mean, they don't want an angry mob showing up on their front lawn. So that's why it's so important for the Democrats to rush this through and to say, that's it, it's done. You try to overturn this, and therefore you are overturning the democratic will of the American people. And so it really is a touch and go. And that's why it's very important that the lawsuit be filed as early as possible and that the DOJ gets involved very quickly and find out if there is anything to be found out.
Yeah, because if we don't get some more clarification on these claims and allegations of fraud, it's just going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy for Trump supporters that the election was stolen. I mean, a slight change in behavior here could give more clarity, and then you can accept the outcome. Now, as far as fraud is concerned, I gave this a long thought today, is that neither one of us are making any claim whatsoever that there was an organized attempt, a systemic attempt to throw this election. We don't have that evidence here. However, considering the mindset or how this ideology motivates people, a lot of people will act independently, okay? And they will do it because they think they're, the greater good, like the Comey nonsense, okay? My thoughts about the country are more important than the law, okay? This arrogance that these people have, okay? So let's be very careful about that. If there is something systemic, I want to know about it, but I'm not making any claims here because no evidence has been presented to us here. Right. But it doesn't mean a lot of fraud could have been committed, okay? Far from it.
Right, no, that's it. But it's very interesting that the media are not acting as they should be, which is to investigate these allegations of fraud. They're just simply screaming, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, particularly as they spent, as you say, they spent the last 4 years claiming for Russiagate and collusion, and Putin stole the election without any evidence. I mean, the best that they had was a few $100s worth of Facebook ads, and they asked us to believe that these few Facebook ads swung an election. That you can believe. But the idea that people were so head up and so fanatical that they actually perpetrated fraud to prevent the man that they hated so much, the orange man they hated so much, which does sound plausible. That's just no voter fraud, no voter fraud. Even though we know everything about American history that voter fraud has been taking place on a substantial scale for years, forever. It's as old as America itself.
The interesting thing, George, is remember right before the election, this hastily gathered press conference about malign influences from China, Russia, and Iran. Where's that? Where'd that go? Well, that went over like a lead balloon. I don't see it in their narrative anymore. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's gone. Exactly. Oh no, Russia gave it a miss this time. Which is an amazing thing. I mean, given how close this election was expected to be, you wonder what were the Russians doing? Getting drunk on vodka. I mean, they just fell asleep at the switch. They forgot to interfere.
Fell asleep at the switch, exactly. Missed your opportunity. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, we didn't realize that it would be a very tightly fought election and that our interference might make a difference. So yeah.
No, the interesting thing here is there's a trap that the Democrats are creating for themselves, because if the Trump people have made it very clear that they just want to know what happened. I think that's a fair enough thing. What happened, okay? Because we've never had this kind of voting experience before. And if the Democrats can't get along with that, then you're going to have this like casting a shadow on this election forever, because people would always say, yeah, it was fixed, okay? I mean, they never proved it wasn't fixed, okay? That's what it's going to get down to. They never proved that it wasn't fixed.
Right.
That's a bad place to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because if they rush this through, they certify it without proper investigation, or judges high-handedly just dismiss the suit, saying, without actually really even bothering to look into the evidence, 70 million people will think we was robbed. And then and I think it's likely that Trump does run in 2024, he will be seen to be a martyr, and he will be in a very strong position to say, hey, I want this job, and this time I'm going to make sure that no one's going to rob me of it. I think that cry would elicit a lot of sympathy from his supporters, to say the least.
Yeah, and what it will do is, again, we not pursuing transparency. The Democrats create this dual tension, this dual power in the country. I mean, look. I mean, if it really gets nasty, McConnell just won't approve anybody for the Biden administration. Okay, he's not obligated to. Okay. He doesn't have to do it. People misunderstand that.
Right.
We're not going to have a hearing on Secretary of State.
Right. So I think it's quite interesting that the Republicans have held firm. They are supporting Trump during this.
I stand corrected. Because I argued otherwise to you a couple of days ago.
I mean, some Republicans, the usual suspects, of course, have said, "Yep, you got to accept it," but what can you expect from Mitt Romney and Ben Sasse? I mean, it would have been shocking if they'd said the other way. And of course, George W. Bush rushed in with his congratulations again.
He's the last person in the world to weigh in on this. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, I mean, Trump's still enjoying the support. I mean, obviously, they're going to be looking at seeing how these lawsuits are going. I mean, if Trump fails to present any kind of compelling evidence in the cases, then probably they'll say, enough of this. But it is, on the face of it, just an extraordinary thing that Trump's vote should have gone up so enormously. I mean, it's a huge boost in his vote. And by happy coincidence, the Democrats also went up by just enough to be able to top him. Again, the problem is that just to finish that, say statistical anomalies are interesting, but probably not sufficient to move judges. You can say, that's very, very odd. 90% of people in Wisconsin went to the polls that day, which is really unusual. No one else had 90%, but probably even that isn't enough to.
Yeah, well, a statistician told me once, every interesting number is wrong. Okay, so
Right.
don't be enthralled by interesting numbers.
Right.
I mean, one of the things I would like to know, why is it you have people like Lindsey Graham really pull it out? I mean, he double digit. I think he won by 11 points, and but it usually is people go with the president down ticket. In this case, there seems to be a number of cases where they went with down ticket with the Republicans, but not with Trump. I mean, I suppose that's possible.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, that is odd. But again, that becomes also suspicious. You kind of wonder whether what happened, because in the case of Biden, it was just that they were voting for Biden, but not voting for anyone down ballot. So that's kind of why there are these statistical anomalies. It's not so much that people wanted to vote for Lindsey Graham and didn't want to vote for Trump. I think it's more that there were an awful lot of people who appeared to vote for Biden, but no one for them down ticket, which again is a very odd phenomenon. Why wouldn't they? I mean, you go to all the trouble of voting, but you're not interested who your senator is going to be, who your congressperson is going to be. So, I mean, that again is one of the issues.
My gut feeling, as we close this out here, my gut feeling is that the more forensic research you do on this election, the anomalies will come out screaming at you.
Right.
All right. Again, I want to be very clear here. I don't want us to be hyper partisan like so many people want us to be. I just want to find out who got what votes. Okay, that's it. That's my litmus test, and then we can go from there. So I think that we're erring on the side of caution. There are laws, and they should be implemented. And if they're not, people have to be held accountable. I think that's a very fair, reasonable thing to ask.
Yeah, and look at it this way. I mean, the United States invariably screams electoral fraud. In other countries, whenever they do this, of course, the media immediately repeat, yup, electoral fraud. But all they have going for them whenever they make these accusations are individual instances. People say, oh, yeah, I saw ballot stuffing here. Oh, yeah, people were filling out ballots for other people. Oh, yeah, look at the statistical anomaly. 90% of the voters went to the poll. That's an impossibility. So that nearly always acts as sufficient basis for the United States government and their media mouthpieces to say, yup, fraud took place. But the only evidence they have is precisely the kind of evidence we have now: individual instances and the statistical anomalies.
But I guess what's the most pathetic thing here about this, George, is that the attitude coming from the left. Okay, there was some anomalies. Maybe there was some fraud. It doesn't matter, because the outcome is what's most important. See, that is a very sick mindset. Okay, because then why can't your political opponent say the same thing? Okay, yeah, there was a little bit of fraud. There was this carousel voting and harvesting, and says, but we lost. Okay, I mean, you can make the same argument, except for the outcome is different. But the left says that they are morally superior because their moral imperative supersedes the law and how you and I understand democracy is a exercise in representation. The left refuses to do that.
That's right. And of course, voter fraud is a serious business, even if it's only on an individual basis, because every vote fraudulently cast means you're defrauding someone else. In other words, somebody else who voted legally, his vote now doesn't count because you voted illegally. So it's actually quite a serious business. I mean, you're actually undermining democracy and you are defrauding legally votes. So the idea that, hey, what the hell does this matter is a kind of frivolous, irresponsible idea. So anyway, thank you so much, Peter. We will, of course, be focusing on this with our customary laser-like intensity. If you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.